Nice, right? Beautiful. Okay, so I'm gonna just
Should I put them behind that?
I'm gonna take my hat off.
My bag is huge.
Okay, there may be one more coming. Does everybody have a comfortable place? There's not very many people here, I don't know, but I will just, for everyone's sake, my name is Elizabeth Clark Wessel. I'm a translator and a poet that is based here in Stockholm. And tonight, I'm extremely pleased that a dear friend of mine and really beautiful poet, Sam Ross, is visiting from Brooklyn to help me celebrate the release of this new chapbook, which came out in April. It won a poetry chapbook contest. So chapbook is like a shorter, usually handmade poetry collection. And it was sponsored by the Spoon River Poetry Review, which is a poetry journal based in Illinois. So I did go and do a celebration in Illinois in April, but this is my celebration here in Stockholm, where I live. And the vast majority of you are my near and dear, so so it's very, very nice to celebrate with you. And the way we're going to do it, we are going to each read about 12 to 15 minutes, and then we at some point, may open the door. Let us know if it's getting too stuffy, and then we'll talk a little bit at the end. And if anybody has questions, they can ask questions at the end. So, and then we'll hang out.
Right.
So Sam's going to start, and I'm going to read his impressive bio. Sam Ross is the author of Company, which received the Four-Way Books Levis Prize in Poetry and Publishing Triangle's Tom Gunn Award. Very fancy. His work has appeared or is forthcoming in Poetry, The New Republic, Boston Review, and Denver Quarterly, among other publications. He has received support from Columbia University School of the Arts, the Watermill Center, the T.S. Eliot Foundation, the Bread Loaf Writers Conference, and the Fine Arts Work Center in Provincetown. He lives in Brooklyn, New York. And he's also the proud father, owner of Phoebe, the cutest dog ever.
Thank you, Liz. I'm so excited to be here. I'm so excited to celebrate this chapbook with Liz. This is my second time in Sweden. The first time was in 2007. It was the year the iPhone came out. So the world has changed a lot. But I spent a summer in Uppsala in college studying the Icelandic sagas and the Eddas and ancient literature, and it really informed my interest in poetry and in being a writer. And Liz told me that she was in Stockholm at that time, so we sort of missed each other. We were ships in the night, Viking ships in the night. And it's wonderful to be back here. Liz is an enormous part of my poetry life. We studied at Columbia together, and I couldn't imagine writing the poems in this book without her, and keeping writing at all without her. So I'm so happy to be back here and celebrating her amazing new work with her. So I'm just going to read some poems from this book, and then some new stuff that I've been working on. When I was fire, I never mourned. I had to begin and begin again with hope before I could look back at what I had done and to whom. When I was fire, I felt my bull beneath me in the chute. The sky was a wall of stuck-shut windows. I hadn't thought in this century it was possible to smell God, but something in the soil, the very last time, it was there when I let the bowl bolt from under, circle, and face me. It was there where I bowed to him, burning. Soul in Leo. Shooting a .22 is perversely gentle. There is no real kickback. It is simply an insistent digging in the shoulder, trailed by the sour smell of burnt gunpowder, shells sputtering from the magazine in a ticking of brass. When I buy a pass to the basement rifle range, my instructor advises that I conceal my gun on the train in a guitar case. Aiming at paper torsos, I see it is foolish to wait for winter days to lengthen. How weak a dependence on light is. Like a body easily betrayed, it can kill a man. In the Persian miniature Soul in Leo, the lion is its own composite of animals eaten by the lion, plaited in the mane, woven in the tail, folded inside haunches like contortionists in an open-walled box of hide. Uncover enough of what you are, and the world won't think to look for someone else. Regarding the murder of your boyfriend's roommate. He walked home at night and was circled by boys with knives who knifed him and left him at someone's front door in a neighborhood called Observatory, where he quickly bled to death. From the observatory on the hill, streets have what realtors call expansive grace, suburban streets of rosewood, music. We would pour lighter fluid in a circle around him every time he fell asleep on the beach with a beer in his hand, but the circle never lit. And though we meant it as a joke, it wasn't a joke. It was devotion. Had he survived, he would have been a patient in Grootschuur Hospital, site of the world's first heart transplant in 1967. That patient died of complications from pneumonia only 18 days after his surgery, though they say his new heart worked well till then. Adaptation, Tel Aviv. I squeeze the aloe flesh over my knees as your cousin scolds me for saying ocean when we are by a sea. To me, this is casual. Isn't it all the same water? To her, it isn't. What I could call her is colonist, since it takes one to know. Later, I wake when evening still stains Viridian above the pink and lemon neighborhood to the shh of your grandfather's slippers on tile, which I hear as the first soft syllable of the name we share. 6 years, now you and I don't speak. If I was not in love, there are secrets a self keeps safe. If I was, you were right to forget me. Water Street. I saw a python around a man walking towards me on Water Street, but it wasn't a snake. It was a ram's horn the length of his arm, curling to his wrist. Catching night light, the horn shone a silver scar across gold-slicked ochre and black. The man wore a fine blue suit. Because I had expected to see one thing living, I was afraid when it was another, made entirely of bone, that seemed to be crashing in a field that was a part of the man and also his covering, a deep blue battleground of silk and wool where life touched life. Trace a line. Once, when I was home, my father told me, "You have the blood of 100,000 innocent Iraqis on your hands." This was confusing, because when I was 21 and flying into Harare, Zimbabwe, he said that it would be better to join the army. But I didn't, and I didn't understand the change of heart, his slip between "we're all in this together" and "you're here on your own." That evening, I saw a snake contorting itself around itself over and over. Quickly, I warned my neighbor, but she said she had already seen it. It had been poisoned in her garage, and she had tossed it over the fence into our yard. I wanted to ask why she didn't lie when she had the chance. It would have been easy enough. The right thing to do. Better than pretending the snake wasn't a living thing dying in front of me. Better than admitting she had chosen our yard for that. But I didn't ask her. I just nodded and steered the mower in a wider perimeter around the snake's seizing body. Time expanding the air forcibly. I woke up in the white-hot middle of a summer night. I saw the future fall apart. Reality reasserted itself, a book's beginning. In January, we ran to the cloisters where elevated views make the city a bedsheet, spread out tight and clean, hospital corners. The colors pale and amiable, then sudden, yellow on blue. I showed you a picture I took that day, using the camera that leaks light in a way that makes me want to cry, makes me want to move to Mount Fuji and paint my life onto 8x10 transparencies. About the picture, you said that's how it felt, but not how it looked. How could that be? I held the cold aperture ring with my fingers and pressed the shutter gently enough, trusting to the chemicals on cold film and the tenets of sympathetic magic. I heard the lock click and whisper. I knew. Later, the bartender asked us what we liked and mapped our afternoon from there with drinks with names like Salt and Ash, the Heights. The horizon was like a train on fire. Let me read a couple more poems from this, one of which features a baby Grace Clark Wessel. From when was it? It was 2016?
Yeah, pretty memorable situation.
That was the election.
Night. That was the night.
Okay, so this was a poem born of election night 2016. I was in at a residency on Cape Cod, Massachusetts, and I drove down to see Liz and Mo and Grace in Connecticut for fun.
We were gonna have such a great time.
We cooked tamales and just slowly the night unspooled into a disaster we're still reckoning with. And that's that. Attendant. We were in bed with the baby, the lights low, both of us holding one of her rabbit feet. And this is Liz's line. Give them free and fair or something close, and revenge is what they'll take. Their turn. In the morning, I drove back north to my green pearl room. You took a wrong turn to get here, a woman at the station said. I froze and she nodded at the license plate on my truck, an Indiana license plate. How do you like it here? At the pump, I fudged the credit card, then gave the code to the cashier. And the last 4 digits, she said. And a fingerprint, she laughed. And your blood, she laughed. Sorry. Let's see, there's a fun one here. Sext. I believe this to be as real as anything but safe. It's like Puccini. We're so close to the moon up here. Let me tell you who I am, and guess about you. Do you like to fable? I mean danka. I mean dance. What I like is not knowing what we look like to each other. Isn't it that way anyway? I saw silverberries so high atop stones they were black against the sky, limbs finger thin. More evidence never hurt a case for handsome, but by the time you reach me, I may be somewhere else. You might not even know. Like sleeping in a tent on a dune, moving miles through the night. Or now, when I'm close. Are you close? And I'm just going to read a couple new poems. They're unpublished, so I'm sort of trying them out. My mom is from Dublin, Ireland, and my parents recently moved back to Ireland, and so I've been writing more poems about that. And I had my baby cousin sort of tragically passed away a couple summers ago in a very sad accident, and my mother and I were in Dublin for the memorial service, and we had a spiritual encounter with the Irish writer Edna O'Brien, if anyone is familiar with her. I have to find the poem. The Ghost of Edna O'Brien. Fresh, the weeping ash trees across the road, shimmering in St. Stephen's Green. Walking to stretch our legs in the bright morning before a long drive to Wicklow, the memorial from my youngest cousin to praise him, another youth lost. The best of us. That's what we heard ourselves saying, my mother and I, to the woman who appeared beside us on the otherwise empty walk, striking up a conversation we'd have thrown ourselves in the street to avoid normally. We saw the gates to the soft green calling, wanted June in silence. But did we know, she asked, about the lost Caravaggio? She spoke of the taking of Christ, practically dug out of the dumpster of the Leeson Street Jesuit house in the 90s, cleaned and conserved, honored now in the National Gallery. She turned her face to the sun, left us at the corner. That night in our separate rooms before drinks, I saw the woman's obituary in the Times. A likeness, just as she appeared near the green. Running down the hall to my mother's blue outline at the door, waiting. You don't have to tell me. It was her. We spoke through the night of what it was the writer meant by telling us of things thought to be lost, coming back to light. I'll end there.
I heard about this magical encounter. Wow. Wow, in poetry. Okay, so I am gonna read a bit. Let me look at my watch. 6:25. Okay, I'll try not to go on too long. I'm just gonna kind of read through it because it's kind of in this order for a reason. So I'll read the first couple and then I might skip ahead. But I am gonna actually read the epigraphs, which I never usually do. But I do think like usually epigraphs are not that important. But right after Trump was elected again, I found this Muriel Rukeyser poem, which has this line: "Rage for the world as it is, but for what it may be, more love now than last year." And so that's been a really important, like, mantra to hold. More love now than last year. So this is Happier Too. And it's Happier Too because it is a sequel. Poems don't usually get sequels, but this one does. Happier Too. I have to take off my glasses. I have given my best years to the banal, to the long morning and the light a certain way, to daydreams and procrastination. The hours of mid-afternoon have been like a drug. So has listening to the same song on repeat. It went fastly. The months collapsed like lungs in the dying patient of the ever-expanding past. The famous poet didn't like my poem. She wrote banal 7 times on its 11 lines. So I carried that incantation with me through these banal years in a little black envelope. Today I decided to rewrite it for her. It knocked banally at the door, like fascism. Dear famous poet, the banal life is even more so now. But I'm different. I've forgotten what the dream of terrifying intensity once felt like, wrapped in the resilience of my own young skin. Here in the middle, or what I hope is the middle, of the common and compulsory life, I've forgotten what it is to be astonished by unfairness. Instead, what refuses to even out has become the banal window dressing of a privileged life, leeching away all color and waking me up in the night. Did you know Virginia Woolf's name was on Hitler's list for liquidation if he won the Battle of Britain? I learned that flat in bed with the flu about a month ago, listening to the rise and fall of the Third Reich. Oh my goodness! Listening to the rise and fall. Okay, I was in a serious part. Okay, with the Nazis. Okay. Did you know Virginia Woolf's name was on Hitler's list for liquidation if he won the Battle of Britain? I learned that flat in bed with the flu about a month ago, listening to the rise and fall of the Third Reich. My family had gone to the country for the weekend, and I was alone with a sonorous British voice as it related this monstrous fact to me from my iPhone. I don't think 2 people could have been happier, she wrote to Leonard at the end of her final note, just months after her life was unknowingly saved. And it was this word, happier, that I kept with me in the little black envelope next to banal. I still know nothing of the moment constantly hatching, or the horror that turns both inward and out. Happier than what? I couldn't know then, and I don't know now. Words bob along the dark river. I catch hold. I try not to let it pull me down. Something. Nationalism is a terrible consequence of language is not a country. More like cunt-ry. Am I right? Ha ha. This pain in my side might kill me yet. May Bloom's got something to sell. I see the dead whenever I want. My government offers me a fresh supply. What have I been doing these last 17 years? is a valid question. A number of things to consider when I consider it. My life is not separate from the air. Air is not separate from the void or from form. This is called Livingston 2003. Livingston is a street in downtown Brooklyn, and it's dedicated to the memory of the street artist Hesh Helber. That was the spring we lived with Hesh, who smoked out Susan Sontag at the New York Film Festival and sold weed to Joan Jett. My boyfriend was working 80 hours a week for a big-name architect, and I was a temp. Hesh and I used to smoke a bowl when I got home and watch reruns of Friends. The local news was all fighting terrorism with duct tape and plastic window insulation. We'd watch and smoke and chat about random stuff. One night he told me about his best friend from college who jumped off the George Washington Bridge. The sister of this friend was dating the friend of my friend's sister, which is what connected me to Hesh. Sometimes he'd mention how he'd like to get into male modeling. Easy money, you know. He was friends with a lot of beautiful bohemians whom he brought home to sleep on our floor. We paid rent in cash and lived precariously because it was New York City in the spring when the war started, and we were 22 or 23 and there was a recession on. Burlesque was briefly popular. At one place in the meatpacking district, half-naked women swam in fish tanks behind the bar. One night, Hesh and I smoked sticky black opium, inhaling it from beneath a water glass, then roamed Manhattan, meeting friends and going to clubs. Bollywood, Britpop, hip-hop, jazz. I remember thinking, this feels too good to ever do again. And I didn't. That spring I went to Barnes & Noble to read magazines and Mrs. Dalloway. I ate 99-cent black bean tacos almost every night. I remember it better than I remember my life a year ago. Hesh said his dead friend told him once, if I've ever seemed happy, it was a lie. Don't trust your eyes. Don't trust Court Street covered in snow. Don't trust the government or the men in your life. Don't trust youth or memory. Most of all, don't trust that. I must have felt bereft most of the time. I need to remember more than the parties we went to. I need to remember more than the gray harbor the day the war started. Eating Oban pan wrapped in white paper, falling in love in a hurtful way. It would push me into the future without much thought. I don't regret it. I miss it. And if I were to tell you what happened to Hesh, well, that would just make you sad.
Mm-hmm.
How am I
Keep going.
doing? Okay. I know some have to go here, but there's a chair. You guys scooch back. We take a little break here. Do we need the door? Is it like, should we have the door open a little maybe? Is everybody okay?
We're okay, Lisa.
Okay, good.
Yeah, go on.
Good. I'm going to read a few more. Okay, this is called the New York Schools. Which, speaking of the New York Schools, Thursday night there's an event here about Joe Brainerd and his collected letters with the academic and researcher Daniel Kane. A really wonderful book. So that's happening Thursday. Commercials in your poetry reading. The New York Schools. They like to stay up all night and write about it. High on speed and weed and the rejection of the oppressive conformity and capitalistic flatness that settled over the land like a death shroud, post-war, mid-draft. They loved the telephone, the city, Buddhism, and jazz. They didn't worry about mastery. They were more American than anything else that has ever happened. They worshipped youth and its casual ways. The whole world was young back then. It was called the boom. A lot of them were just white kids from somewhere else who arrived on buses and trains. They had each other and they made that look so good. I'm no scholar, neither were they. How free, how obvious, And yet, let's see. Okay, here's a little bit of a long one. I need some water. I'm like, I've got cotton mouth up here. So, and then I'll read this long one. Maybe one more after that.
Relay.
Thank you, guys. Okay, this is called nonfiction. I'm in the kitchen unloading the dishes when Gia Tolentino declares her brain has broken. The phone is on the counter and her voice streams out describing how the boundaries between internet and not internet are starting to disintegrate. The dishes suddenly seem less solid to me. Are they dishes or props for a real life? It makes me think about the viral image of a woman standing in line to order a coffee while staring at a block of glass. It was an ad, actually, for that phone-shaped glass, and I wonder what in my bundle of data says I'm open to participating in a shtick like that. What is off and what is on seems to be the unanswerable question of this age. It was the social question that obsessed the reading classes of the 1830s and 40s. They entered the dank, narrow streets of the poor and recorded what misery they found in the way they preferred, with beautiful precision and barely suppressed prurience. There was a fluxy, non-linear, and hazy quality to their intellectual life, Christopher Clark writes. Or in other words, revolutions fail all the time. Nothing settles into on or off. James C. Scott said we were forced to live like this by the grains, some thousands of years ago, bound to the land and property, and when I read his book on the matter, it occurred to me, so this is why women are unfree. They needed to domesticate us first. Still, the barbarians often ruled over the settled ones who were building the things the settled built, civilizations and slavery and bread ovens, etc., etc. In The Dawn of Everything, Graeber and Wengrow write that cities predate farming and used to pop up with the seasons like Stonehenge and other places lost to time. Easy to romanticize such things and hard not to become a romantic, who were the very best critics of modernity and created whole categories for loss, while realizing not a damn thing could be done to stop the losing. The English Civil War was fought over the placement of altars. They immiserated themselves and decimated the countryside. A dour people with a dour God, who had suffered 3 centuries of regular visitations of the bubonic plague and revolted during a brief ice age caused by a still unfathomable and mostly unrecorded loss of human life on the other side of the world. I almost start to root for their goofy king, who just wanted to dance and kill Puritans and have absolute power over the people. These were my ancestors, the ones who move, the ones who take, the unreal things they believed in and made real. Guys, what will hold me down to the dusty day and the hours, to a wind that annoys me, to the spectral mirror that I hold in my hand? The world is the totality of facts, not of things. Wittgenstein wrote that. I won't pretend to understand him, except I'm surrounded by things and facts, and my brain is broken, and all the doctors are quacks. Okay. I think 2 more. Let's see here. Late. I wake up at 3 a.m. most nights, turn on my side, and grab my phone. News, mediated, pixelated, digestible, zoomed in, zoomed out, I'm back on it. When I felt depressed, which is no feeling at all, I read romance novels. It's the perfect genre to remove anxiety and replace it with longing. I know what I should do and don't do. I know what I can't do, but want to do. For example, snow begins so wetly, and you ask me to run out into it. It has taken me years to accept that I am not the only woman with a messy house. I hate winter. I love bananas and modernity. I hate the ethnic cleansing at the beginning and the end and the middle of states. I love sitting immersed in thought. I hate that it leads nowhere, changes nothing, helps no one. And I'll end with this. It's called Heart, And it's about a walk that I like to take from my apartment there to Ramisholmen. Heart. If I leave this room, enter the hall, pull on my boots, run down the stairs, exit the building, cross the playground, pass by the graves that ring the yellow church, wait for the crosswalk, traverse the cobblestones, enter the tunnel, take the footbridge over the brackish water, walk by the train station toward the white ship permanently anchored on the shores of the empty city, I will arrive at the last piece of the first wall, built by a king to keep his enemies at bay, and there my mind will sink beneath the rising ground to the stone mason's mark, which is shaped like a heart. Thank you so much, dear ones. And the idea was that we would have a little conversation now. Unfortunately, our dear friend Max was unable to make it. Family situation, totally no problem, but we are going to have a little bit of a conversation. We'd love to have any questions. Please help us with this. Yeah.
So I was thinking that what occurred to me most listening to you read, and I've thought about this for a long time, is there's something like essayistic about your poems to me, in that they sort of like sustain ideas while often kind of like digressing and exploring like intellectual areas and concerns. How do you start a poem though? Like, do you start with like an idea, in sort of like an intellectual idea, or do they come from like a different place, and the ideas that you end up exploring sort of arrive through the process of writing? Does that make sense?
It absolutely does, and I think it's a really good question. And I think that it's often like an image or a piece of an idea.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, Heart, the last poem.
Mm-hmm.
When I was at the Louvre, I don't pronounce it very
Nice.
well, whatever. But when you enter now, they have uncovered this part of the deep structure of the
Mhm.
building, and they've built things down there. And what they've uncovered has all of the original marks of the stonemasons. And it used to be, if it's above ground, the stonemason mark is turned away from where you can see it. But they were just these very simple, like they could be a cross or a heart or a different thing. And so I had that image in my head for a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that somehow, but I don't really know how I write there, but I do think like it's often kind of like an image. And also like that first poem, Happier, I've been so obsessed with this line about, from Virginia Woolf, about saying like no two people could be happier.
And that's so interesting to me, because it arrives in the back half of the poem, or the you land there, you don't start there. And that's interesting to me, that if that was like the genesis, or that's the sort of kernel.
The genesis was that last year I was in New Orleans with two former classmates of ours, and we were telling stories about like being in our workshops when we were doing our MFAs, and I was telling the story about this famous poet putting like banal on my and
Does that work? Yeah.
no, I'll tell you after.
Tell us now, we're done. You're not here.
Okay, but I'll tell you after the recording.
Once that light goes off.
So, no, anyway, so I told that story, and I actually felt, it's one of those poems actually where I felt kind of this sense of like anger, like I'm gonna write it again for her. Like I'm
a fuck you poem.
Yeah, it's like a little bit like, I think that poem had something that it was trying to say about like life being unfair. Very banal topic, but like all topics of poems are kind of been out, you know?
Yeah.
And like they're like
Life Friends has been out.
yes. So like I get that, but I think that she was, kind of unwilling to like engage with the poem where it was at. And so I was like, okay, I'm just gonna like go deeper, and I know even more about this subject now. Like
Counterpoint.
Yeah.
Look where it got you.
yeah.
You
So
know?
I'm like, okay, I'm gonna lean into it, and then it was just all of those things together of like having listened to that book while I had the flu, and thinking so much about fascism.
Because I mean, the poems sustain ideas too, but I think like syntactically, you have this real gift of like sustaining a sentence too across lines. Like the long sentence in your poems, I think, is a real technical skill that you have that is like astonishing in places. I love it.
This is why we bring him. Can we talk a little bit about your new book? I mean,
there is no new book, so no.
I mean, it looks like you had a lot of work there.
I have a manuscript, and I think I like it. It's sort of about grief and grieving, and New York club culture, dancing, like sort of pre-pandemic dancing, in like Brooklyn nightlife, and the sort of like the kind of ins and outs of ecstatic and whatever the opposite of the ecstatic is.
What's the opposite of like
Despair, I
despair?
suppose.
Yeah.
And arriving at a kind of stasis.
Yeah. I can't wait to read it.
Thanks.
Does anybody out here, like, anybody have any questions? I mean, no pressure.
Who are you talking to?
I think, like myself.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, definitely. But like myself as like the ideal reader that is discovering the poem. Hasn't written a poem.
That's me. That's why.
Sorry, you.
Yeah.
I think that's also something that makes it so essayistic in style, right?
Mhm.
It sounds like you're trying to work things out for the words.
Mhm.
So I mean, catching on that kind of, is this an essay? I think is kind of part of it.
Mhm.
I'm
Sam,
actually.
who are you talking to?
Sometimes I was listening to that, and sometimes it feels like I'm not talking, I'm listening, and I'm trying to write down what I'm listening to. And sometimes the record of that sounds like something that makes sense to me and sounds very similar to me. And sometimes when it's more lyrical and more kind of like fragmented or strange, I'm like, well, okay, I heard it though, so that's what I heard. And then you just kind of like, well, I'm going with it, because it sounds right.
Mhm.
And when it doesn't sound right, or when it sounds off, then you can get into like the editorial thing of like, maybe I wasn't listening closely enough, or maybe this isn't something worth listening to. Like you can make choices at a certain point, but I think that's how I often think of it. And sometimes when you're in a dry period, for example, you're waiting to listen to something, you're desperate to listen to something, and it can be scary because it's like, well, will I ever hear anything again?
It sounds a little bit like composing music.
Exactly. Yeah, it is, because you're kind of like, it can be like, it's often like when I'm falling asleep or something, a little voice will like have a little line or something, and I'll be like, I'm going to bed. I'm not writing. and then another voice will say like, this is it, man. Like if you don't write it down now, like it's not coming again. Like you've got a whole job, you've got a whole life, you're gonna go grocery shopping, like this is it. And so then it's just like, okay, you turn on the light and I like get my phone or a pen or something and I like write it down. And then you find the time to kind of like flip through like what it was you heard when you were like falling asleep, and sometimes it turns into something, and sometimes it was like, you know, something not much, but you know. But yeah, I imagine that's what maybe that is what some composers, it's like for some composers.
Do you reuse those things if you don't use them, or do you just, is it like it either comes or it doesn't come?
I try to, I end up, sometimes I always try and think of them as material to which I might return. Like I like to imagine that nothing is lost, because otherwise it's like, it's too, I like to think there's a little, you can always kind of draw from something.
I'm just interested in what sort of the musicality, because both, you sort of read your poems, you have this kind of rhythm to emphasis to different lines. What is it like for when you hear someone else read your poems? This is a question for both of you. Is it like a tribute, or is it like someone,
Often, often it's a huge gift to hear somebody else read it, and especially like we're friends with so many extraordinary readers, and so sometimes it is like it can be estranging in a way, like you I don't know that you ever hear something like new that you hadn't sort of considered before, but it's just, it feels like a gift to like kind of hear your words like come out of somebody else's, in somebody else's tone and in somebody else's, because you can, it's an act of attention and care, and they're spending time with it, and then you get to listen.
Yeah, any kind of like reading from someone else, whether it's like,
unless they really screw it up, and then, and then you're just angry. It's like, that's not how it should sound.
Get away!
It's like this.
No, but I mean, any kind of reading is kind of feels like, I mean, in this world where everyone's attention is so preyed upon constantly, to be read is, it's a gift. To be read, to be listened to, that's like a very that's a very wonderful gift that someone gives to you. So yeah, I can't even think of anybody reading my poems. You make me read them out loud to me now. but like when people have written about my work or shared my work or sent me feedback about my work, I always feel a great like sense of gratitude that anybody even engages, I think. But yeah.
That's beautiful, the act of attention. That's really, really sweet.
Because it does take, I mean, as words on a page, it takes an activation. It isn't like a painting or a sculpture that needs attention and being regarded, but words need a particular type of activation to come alive in a way that maybe other mediums don't as much.
Yeah.
Or differently.
No, and I mean, I do think also, like, the thing that is really, really wonderful about poetry is that it sort of provokes a kind of thinking while you're reading it, that is a very important kind of thinking that is not the kind of thinking that our world asks us to do usually. So I think that's for me is the return constantly to poetry, that I just very much to like follow what is happening. I mean, there's the beauty of it and all those things, but to me it's the way that it affects, I just feel like it's in my synapses in some way. And I think music does that as well.
Yeah.
Of course, but I feel like music, like there are people that listen to very challenging music, but to me, like I listen to music that's not necessarily very challenging. It's like pop and it's nice and it, you know, makes me feel, but it doesn't. Yeah, poetry like challenges you a little, you know. So, yeah. Anything else before we wrap up? Good. Got books for sale.
Yeah.
Support our store, our favorite place. We give so much to the community. So thank you so much. First of all, Daniel, thank you so much for hosting us. And thank you everyone who's here for coming. Let's hang out a little. Maybe we'll go somewhere else after if anybody has time. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Too bad you don't mind. Okay, there we go.